The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hi, everybody.
And it's Wednesday, and Phil, I feel like it's been a while since we've done one of these things.
We skipped Project Melway last week, and it was the worst thing that ever happened.
I gotta be honest, it was kind of a needed break for me, but I'm sorry that you were distressed by it.
I don't really have words. I crave what's that thing called? Ritual. I crave regiment. I crave structure.
Man, and, I wish you could find a profession that allowed you to really delve deeply into stuff like that.
I know, it's true. If only I could find something that would fulfill that need for me for structure and ritual.
Indeed.
That would be
wah, wah. So,
ladies and gentlemen,
why don't you tell us what Project Melway is, Phil?
Project Melway, brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute, is a project that Andy and I have been commissioned to endeavor towards completing. That I didn't know how that sentence was going to finish.
I knew that. That was pretty clear.
Project. What? I thought I hit it really well. Project Melway. Watch every single Mel Gibson movie in chronological order.
Baby.
Do it now.
Yep.
Project Melway, once a week, we delve into the filmography of MG, the elusive, the talented, the eccentric, the difficult, the galvanizing, the confusing and confused, fantastically talented, and utterly mixed up and
problematic.
Problematic figure that is Mel Gibson. And one movie at a time. And this week we are privileged to discuss the 2002 film We Were Soldiers, which is a Vietnam War film, his second Vietnam War film, and only the first one that was any good. Air America was terrible. Era terrible.
Yes.
That would be my if I was like a Rex Reed type guy or what was that guy, Gene Shalit with the crazy eyebrows?
Yeah, totally.
Air America was era terrible, you know?
Yeah. Or your Ain't It Cool News headline. I just Mel Gibson is to Hollywood stardom as The Merchant of Venice is to Shakespeare's catalog, right?
I love when you compare Mel Gibson to a Jew. For so many reasons.
No, I don't mean. Okay, that.
Oh, you didn't mean the character of the merchant. You meant the play Merchant of Venice.
I did mean the play, and I wish.
Say more.
Wish the Merchant of Venice just for. I mean, I love the Merchant of Venice as is, even with its problems. But I wish for the next 30 seconds it had nothing to do with religion or Judaism, because that draws a parallel I don't want to draw. But the fact is that the Merchant of, and we can talk for however long we want to about, was Shakespeare anti-Semitic, and frankly, I don't think you can at all make the argument that he was comparable to the rest of his time.
Fair enough.
To his contemporaries. But it is a fact that when that play is put on today, it is a comedy. Right? People know it. The first thing we learn about it these days is, oh my God, this Jew is horribly mistreated. But it's a comedy, and Shylock's conversion at the end of the play is treated as a good thing. And so it is one of those plays that is called Shakespeare's problem plays. That are called Shakespeare's problem plays. And I think and because everything is good, and yet there's this thing. And even when Mel Gibson is in a bad movie, even when he's bad in a movie, you can still...
Which is really rare.
Agreed. No, totally agreed. Totally agreed. But even when it happens, there's a lot of good stuff. And the thing that I love most about Project Melway, it's not... we've talked about, I love him more now. And that's true. I do. But that's not... But I am ever mindful of the things that people know about him now, and and
it doesn't. Here's the interesting thing for me.
Yeah.
To say that I love him does not mean that I am blind to his faults or that I would even defend anything that he's done.
Sure.
It is simply, and this is where I'm going to get a little philosophical.
Please do.
You know the phrase "to know him is to love him." Great song.
I
or
do.
"to know her is to love her."
Yes.
Is
to
love her.
Yep.
Just to,
Yep.
I tend to think that by and large, that's actually true about almost every person alive. That the thing that keeps us, the thing that makes it easy to hate someone is to not know their context and to not know about them.
Yeah.
I don't think The Sopranos glorified Tony Soprano. I think it showed a human being.
Yeah.
And the reason you love Tony is because you know him so well and you desire redemption for someone, because to know someone is to love them, not necessarily to like them, not necessarily to think everything they do is okay, but to have affection for them. The knowledge of someone breeds intimacy, and there is, even within contempt, sometimes a closeness and a love.
Mm-hmm.
So to say that I root for Mel Gibson is not to say that I root for Mel Gibson to prove his detractors wrong.
Yeah.
It's to say that I root for Mel Gibson to recover sanity, to find a place in this world and in this culture. Should that be what he needs? Maybe he needs to completely disappear from it for his own sanity. But it's to be at peace, whatever that looks like. I don't hold grudges against him for any insanity. Maybe that's because I'm not the one who was wronged. Although I tend to think if someone says really bad, awful things, then we all suffer, not just
everyone's wrong.
Right. I tend to be one of the people who thinks like that. It's all lofty and goofy in that sense. But I do think that. So Mel, I mean, like, I love his work and I love what he does. This movie, We Were Soldiers.
Yeah.
This is unquestionably one of my 2 or 3 favorite performances by Mel Gibson. And unquestionably, when we, at the end of this, if we were to do a top 10, this will definitely be in my top 10 Mel Gibson movies. It very, very, very easily might be in my top 5.
Wow.
It is.
Okay.
It is. I don't want to watch it too very many times, let's be honest. It's, it's a war movie and it's very brutal.
Yes, it's tough to.
But it is a very carefully constructed, well done movie with that and the okay. Tell him what you told me when we were going into watching this flick.
I was not looking forward to
about Vietnam War movies.
Yeah, I was not looking forward to it just because I feel like I've seen so many, and it's not just that, like Platoon, The Deer Hunter, even lesser movies like Casualties of War. Like, even like these were. I feel like every year of my life I've seen a Vietnam War movie, like a new one. I mean, whether it was new to me or because they're always making it because. And I mean, it makes total sense. It is a conflict rife with metaphorical significance, and it's Hollywood, and they get to blow stuff up real good. Apocalypse Now, like how is it possible for a new movie to sort of break through that barrier? Not even to be better than those movies, just to be considered in the same breath. And so. And that's unfair of me. I mean, and I recognize that. I mean, it's my honest reaction, but it's an unfair reaction, and I guess I'm okay.
I don't
with
think
that.
It's unfair. I think it's like, look, you got to prove it. You know, like,
right?
Okay, you're making another one of these. Why?
Right.
Does it need to exist?
Right. It's almost it's akin to, although not precisely the same as, how I have told you that, like, I have watched the one of the first French New Wave films, The 400 Blows, and it's about this disaffected kid who the world doesn't understand. And I saw it after I saw all of the terrible, terrible takeoffs and remakes, and some of them were good, but blah, blah, blah. I mean, how many movies can you name with, like, a kid?
About disaffected youth.
About disaffected youth, exactly. And yet, by the time I got to The 400 Blows, which is unquestionably one of the 2 or 3 greatest movies of the 60s and one of the 2 or 3 greatest movies of that kind of movie, my response was a definitive,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So that's I guess what I mean when I say that is that's what I was worried about with this movie.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And you know what? And I liked
And
it. I liked
although
it.
although to be fair, and
Please.
part of the reason you'd say that though, and I think it's what by the time you got to the 400 blows, except the thing about the 400 blows I've never seen it, and I'm not going to anytime soon. The thing that it has going for it is that you actually said, yeah, but by the time I got back to the sort of the originator of this genre,
Right.
whereas We Were Soldiers, it
True.
deserves skepticism
Right.
because it was made in 2002.
Right.
What are we doing here? Are we making another Vietnam War movie really in 2002? What has not been said?
Yeah.
And I think what had not been done that I can think of, and there's probably movies I'm not thinking of, but what I had not seen, which it was exactly what one of the things I appreciate about the movie is I think they accomplished what they were trying to accomplish, which was a take on the book, which the colonel who co-wrote it, the colonel who it's about, played by Mel Gibson,
Right.
said he wanted to see something that actually showed a war movie from a soldier's point of view. But here's the other thing that he didn't say, but I think that was really part of it, which was this was, to my mind, as apolitical of a war movie as a war movie as I have seen about the Vietnam War. This movie was not, to my mind, a statement about the merits for or against the Vietnam War, though it does show some legitimate critique on the colonel's part of the strategy.
Right.
And you can't help but see the futility involved. It's not that it's completely and utterly without critique.
Right.
But the point of the movie, I mean, Apocalypse Now, is about the utter madness and insanity, not only of the Vietnam War, but probably of war in general.
So you'd say that's an anti-war movie? Would you say that?
I would disagree with Monsieur Truffaut about this. I think that it is utterly an anti-war movie.
Yes.
And you have that in Platoon. Oh boy.
Right. Born on the 4th of July.
Yes, clearly. Everything Oliver Stone has done. ... Casualties of War. Casualties of War is this movie, and I think this succeeds. And it came out the same time as Black Hawk Down, which I initially liked much more. Black Hawk Down was one of my favorite war movies of all time.
Sure.
And I need to go back and watch it because there's these two movies were compared to each other for reasons we can get to later. But both of those movies, in my mind, when I think about them, step back from the meta critique of war or the particular wars they are portraying.
Yeah.
And they focus specifically on one mission.
Yep.
A very short, specific period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it focuses almost entirely on the soldiers themselves, hence the title, rather than the sort of grand, sweeping picture of a war. And yes. I think it is to both of those films, Black Hawk Down and We Were Soldier, to both of those films' success that they do so.
I agree with that. I think that's really well said. I think, and what a lot of Hollywood movies, the problem with a lot of Hollywood movies and war movies might be are at least as susceptible, maybe more than other genres, is a problem of scope. You want to, even if you're not trying to make like a Dr. Zhivago epic, right? You still and it's because what you're doing is you're putting a lot of creative people together, right? And you're like, I have this idea, let's put this in the movie. I have this idea, and the most creative thing you can do with an artistic endeavor is exclude. It's like what doesn't need to be in here.
Yes.
And I think I agree with you, and I absolutely, I'm so glad you said that, because I had absolutely not thought about either of those movies this way, and I think that's right, and I think whatever degree of success, and I don't say that to, damn with faint praise, I think they are both quite successful at what they try to do. Yep. I think a large percentage of that is because of of they're just doing, it's not an insult to say it just tells the story it tells. Right. Yep.
And it goes to something that I believe deeply in, which is the the value, not just the value, but the oh man, what's that word? The virtue of limitations. And I am intellectually, or I should say, intellectually and cognitively, a huge fan of limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, and in my heart, I hate them.
Sure.
One of my biggest problems personally with my personality, with my struggle with my own life, is I hate the mere possibility that I am a limited person. So most of the things that I beat up on myself about, most of the things that I am mean to myself about, are my failings. That if I were well balanced, I'd be like, "Hey, listen, you can't do everything, right?"
Right. Right.
Like I got a buddy who, when he gains 10 pounds, is like, "Well, gained a few pounds. I'll deal with that later." When I gain 10 pounds, I'm like, "I am the worst human being alive,"
Right.
and that's because I can't just grasp the fact that for me, weight is something I struggle with, and food is something I struggle with, and that's a struggle. I
Yeah.
hate that it's a struggle, so I blame myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate limitation. It bothers me. I want to think that I can do anything, and I think this is a problem with our culture, and maybe with humanity. I don't know. I mean, this is why scarcity. I mean, we have a problem with scarcity, and we want to think we can squash scarcity.
Right.
But the reality is, you try to do too much, and it just doesn't work. And I
Right.
think movies, I mean, this is we go back to what's called the Hays Code, which was for many years. A lot of people don't know this, but for many years, movies had to follow a set of rules that they couldn't be released in Hollywood.
Right.
If they
morality rules of morality.
Right, you
Yes.
couldn't really release in Hollywood if you had nudity. You
Right.
couldn't really be released in major film studios if you had nudity, if you had obscenity, obscene language, explicit language, if you had certain amounts of violence.
Right.
Do I believe that the government should make such rules? Of course not. Would it be amazing if movies just chose to follow? If a certain filmmaker just said, "For the rest of my life, I'm going to follow the Hays Code
Right.
by my own choice"? I think that would be, assuming they were talented people. But I love the limitations.
Yes, because what you
that
get
does.
is instead of like, all right, we have to show these actors are attracted to each other. Let's have both of them disrobe and
do it
and hit the sack. Whereas what ends up happening is a lot of those movies made under the Hays Code are really sexy. Like they just really are.
Sexy without, and this is so important. We've talked about this before in the show, the difference between sexy and sexual.
Yes, agreed.
And so We Were Soldiers doesn't pretend that it's about the entire war.
Right.
It doesn't pretend that it's about war as a whole.
Right.
But in so doing, it speaks volumes about the insanity of that war.
Yes.
While painting a true, honest picture of the courage of a soldier, and the fear that they face, and the ambiguity. There's that moment before they go off to war where Chris Klein's character is in the chapel, and he's got a baby that's just been born, and he basically says to his colonel, played by MG, like, how do I accept the fact that I never want, I'm risking my child being an orphan and all this stuff, but the last thing I want to do is make some other child somewhere an orphan.
Right.
That I'm trying to protect my country and our way of living, and in so doing, I may make another woman a widow and another child an orphan.
Yeah.
And Gibson doesn't actually have a good answer for that, and it's not a failure of screenwriting. It's that there's no good answer for that.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And his prayer sort of sums that up. It's a prayer that is a hypocritical prayer, which to some degree most prayers are hypocritical on some level. It's this, like, I hope we're all okay, and by the way, ignore all the heathen prayers of those people that we're trying to kill.
Right.
Like,
yes.
It's done with a little bit of cheekiness, but that's not the whole, that's not the overarching feeling of the movie. It shows that mentality, but it's not a rah-rah movie. So I was mightily impressed with it. I was mightily impressed with Mel Gibson's performance, which I thought was, well, first of all, in the annals of male crying, and in the annals of Mel Gibson crying,
oh man,
this movie, holy moly, Andy Roth.
I agree.
Just wow.
Yeah, it's true. I agree that he did a really nice job in this movie. It was
It's
just
a very
really,
restrained
yeah,
and specific performance.
yeah. Which again is
And
not
his
something you
accent
see a
was
lot
impeccable.
in. Yes, his accent's impeccable. And it's not an easy accent. It's not straight, nondescript American. Um, it's. I think I. One of the things, for example, one of the things I wasn't sure I liked, and then I knew that I liked it as the movie went on. The start of the battle doesn't feel like any other Vietnam War movie I've ever seen, and the reason is it's not in like deepest jungle where like the Viet Cong are
It's not the typical run through the jungle.
right, and part of it, it's almost like a horror movie with assault rifles because
Right.
you don't know where they're coming from because in I mean the guerrilla tactics that we
Right.
use against the
Right.
British and the Vietnamese use against us, they
Right.
are effective for precisely that reason. You don't know where they're coming from,
Yeah.
and that is creepy and terrifying. Um, but because of the cajillions of Vietnam War movies I've seen, I was like, this feels different, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
You know, with of course with much of my conscious brain realizing, well, they're not going to put a jungle in the valley if there wasn't a jungle in the valley.
Right.
Right. Um, but but what I think they did a wonderful job of, and I couldn't see it until I was on the other side of it, was it is still in the best way, in the way that I hope I never have to find out, war seems to be. It is totally confusing.
Yes.
Like you're like,
Yes.
what are the people approaching me, friend or foe? I have no like. Where is everyone? The geography is all screwed up. Like, and yet it manages to do it without confusing me as a. It confuses me as someone experiencing it without confusing me as a person who is watching the film.
Yes, it is clearly not a. Again, it goes back to the ambiguity or the sort of hypocrisy of Mel Gibson's characters. Colonel Williams, Colonel Hal Moore, Colonel Moore's prayer. Like, it's not a failure of screenwriting. It's not a failure of directing. They have figured out a way to show that this is confusing and that you don't need to be a horror show in the jungle. There's something terrified about being splayed out in the middle of open ground.
Right.
That's I want to talk about something that the strength, to me, one of the strengths or weaknesses of a war movie is it needs to have iconic imagery. Now, I'd say realistically, all movies need to have some memorable imagery, or what the heck. The scene of Jesus Quintana in the introduction of Jesus Quintana in Big Lebowski with the Hotel California in Spanish playing, and it shows the ball up close and him licking the ball, and then that whole thing, that is beautiful iconography. And before you ever even hear him talk, you get the character.
Yes.
War movies, though, because they're dealing with war and because we have an expectation of action and just how important war is in the history of the world and in our country, there needs to be iconic imagery.
Yeah.
And without having sort of like specific amazing set pieces, although there's a couple, there are some scenes in this movie, shots in this movie, that are miraculous, just stupendous. And the one I want to talk about is, well, first of all, there's that group of like 7 guys that's trapped out in the middle of nowhere or in the spot, and they're surrounded. And there's a scene in the middle of the night when it's completely dark, and the guys like call for light. They're nearby, even though they can't hear them. And they call for light, and this like the whoever flies over them drops a flare.
Right.
And the soldiers are literally 3 feet away from them, coming after them.
Yes.
That is one of the most, and I can describe it to you, and I don't even feel bad as a spoiler for people who haven't seen it, because I can say that it won't matter, because when you see it, it will blow your mind.
It's an incredible
and
image.
Pretty much every scene that they shoot with those guys is amazing.
Yes.
There is a scene. There's another thing that this movie does really well, which is it ties, and it does something that Apollo 13 fails to do. Our friend Daniel Carlson points this out. Apollo 13 sets up all this tension The main thing that Jim Lovell needs to do is get back to his wife.
Right.
And
yes.
what the movie fails to do is show Jim Lovell reunite with his wife.
That's right. That's right.
It's an utter failure of an otherwise, I would say, actually perfect film, other than that scene. And Daniel Carlson pointed that out. We Were Soldiers begins and ends not with the husband and wife, but well, basically it's not the very beginning shot with him, but it's close to it. And the way that it treats the women back home is really well balanced. It serves to create breaks in the tension, but those breaks in the tension end up being just as dreadful. And dreadful, I mean full of dread.
Yes.
And the scene that I don't know about you, man, the scene that I cried was it's the scene when the taxi cab shows up to her house. She realizes that cabs are showing up to the houses, that there's having cab drivers show up with the telegrams that say your husband's dead. And they all live in the same neighborhood. They all live in the same fort, So, or compound. So then the cab drives up to her house, and she thinks that her husband's dead. Hal Moore's wife, Mel Gibson's wife, Madeline Stowe, who does just a phenomenal... And I love Madeline Stowe.
Yes,
she's just a phenomenal actress. I wish there were more
Madeline Stowe in my life. Absolutely.
And yes, agreed. She's just a wonderful, wonderful actor, and her performance in this movie is an anchor. She is an anchor in this film. And the thing that she and Hal Moore both have, this is an interesting marriage, you see, because in most marriages, or quite often when you have partnerships, there is the steady one and the volatile one.
Right.
And what we have here is two steady people.
That's true. That's true.
Whose marriage complements each other in their stubbornness and their steadiness.
Yeah.
And what in that scene when she sees the cab come up to her house, and it turns out that the cabbie is asking her for an address. I'm going to lose it again. That scene is amazing, and the way that she handles it, and then the way that plot develops is, and it shows something you don't necessarily see in soldier movies, war movies, which is not only the camaraderie between the soldiers, but the inherent camaraderie between the wives.
Yes.
Beautifully done.
Yes.
Beautifully done.
The racial subtext of the wives' plot was a little ham-fisted.
It was, okay. I agree, but it only lasted for literally 30 seconds.
You're right. I don't want to leave that scene with the cabbie yet, because I couldn't agree more with anything you've said. But interestingly, the line that killed me the most, and I won't get it verbatim, and it's only because I've seen scenes of that ilk before. I've seen the soldier's wife deal with either the knowledge that her husband is dead or the fake out. Yeah. I mean, think about League of Their Own, right?
Yep. Oh.
Right. What I don't think I'd ever seen was the cabbie. And he was just like,
That's what killed me. You're right. No, you're right.
I don't like this job. I'm just trying to do it. Oh.
You're right. It's not even her reaction, although that was amazing. It's his reaction to her. I don't want to do this.
Right.
This is not who I want to be.
Yes. It was just
I don't like this job, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Very well done.
I'm getting a little right now.
There is a movie with Ben Foster and I want to say Woody Harrelson called
The Messenger. I haven't seen it yet.
Wonderful things about it. I haven't seen it. Yeah. I don't know if I could handle a movie.
They made a movie called something like Delivering Chase or some sort of movie.
Yes.
That Kevin Bacon did.
Right.
And also, it was solid.
Okay.
What else do we need to talk about here? Oh, I mean the performances in general.
Yes.
Sam Elliott without a mustache.
Right?
And here's the thing. I want to give props to Sam Elliott because his character is written paper thin.
Yeah.
It is a stereotype. It is an archetype.
Yes.
And he imbues it with such honest, authentic sensibility that it does not for a second when he does it feel manufactured, false, cinematic. It feels, though we as moviegoers are like, oh, he's that character. You believe him.
Yeah,
You
you do.
just you believe him.
You do.
And it's just he is one of those guys. Sam Elliott's one of those guys that's going to die, and people are going to go, you know, and not enough people are going to go, wow,
I agree.
because he is a special actor.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
He brought gravity to Roadhouse.
Which has
Kaboom.
got to be a minor miracle. Yes.
No.
Speaking of the performances, it is such a short performance. I'm done for a while seeing Clark Gregg die in movies. I just don't want him to die anymore. I just like him too much.
And I knew he was going to die in that movie.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to like him. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Do you know my introduction to him was a movie called State and Maine by David Mamet, where he just plays the worst person.
I don't remember that movie at all, but I believe you.
You don't remember State and Maine?
Believe
It's about
it.
them it's about them shooting a movie in New England.
I know. I know. I remember that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Andy. Oh, go rent State and Maine like tomorrow, like yesterday. It is it has one of the great Alec Baldwin lines of all time,
I
where he
remember that
crashes a
moment.
car with an underage girl in it, flips the car, gets out of the car, looks around and goes, "So that happened."
Of course I remember that line.
Oh.
Of course, but I think that's the only thing I remember from that movie.
It's got William H. Macy as the director, and someone hands him a piece of bread that someone has baked just for him, and he goes, "Yeah, like I'm really going to eat a carbo or a carbohydrate." Like he says the whole thing.
Nice.
But it's like, anyways.
My introduction to
Judd
him was
Gregg.
In Good Company, where he doesn't play up like a truly bad guy, but he's just an officious, like bureaucratic middle manager in this company.
Yep.
But like, I just love the guy.
I'm ready for him to be in everything now. I'm excited for Shield Agents thing,
Me too.
and I hope
Me
that
too.
works out for him. I hope it works.
Me too.
The other person that does not get enough credit in this world, in my opinion,
Please.
is a gentleman by the name of Kinnear, Gregg.
Yeah, he was really good.
He was perfectly cast
Yes.
because he was surprising, because
Yeah.
his casting was surprising and he lived
Yeah.
into it, and it was really special. Kerry Russell. This
It's
movie,
very good.
this movie is like a who's who. I mean, John Hamm is in it.
Right. Yes.
And you know what? Let me tell you, here's the strength of John Hamm as Don Draper. This movie came out a full 7 years or 8 years before Mad Men happened.
Okay.
But having seen Don Draper in action for 7 years now, I went back and watched, and he was in it, and I was like, well, his character's not going to die. Because he's Don Draper.
Awesome.
And guess what? He didn't die. And I was like, told ya.
Yeah.
I just knew in my heart. I was like, they're not going to kill him.
Yeah.
It's Don Draper.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Can't kill John Hamm.
That's right.
His charisma is just sick nasty, man. I mean, wow. I guess I don't have enough words for John Hamm. But and his character is not a big deal in this movie.
No.
He's not a big, but he's just there, and it makes me happy.
Even Chris Klein is good. Even Mark Blucas is good, who I know
Can I say
just from
something?
Buffy.
Even Chris Klein is good.
Even Chris Klein is good. You know, name a movie you've enjoyed Chris Klein in that doesn't start with the words American Pie.
Election.
Paul Metzler, you Betzler. Well done. Well done.
but he's one of those guys. He fits in the Keanu Reeves school of acting, where it's a very specific part he plays,
Yep.
or else. And in this movie, he doesn't play that part.
That's right.
He plays it really straight.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a really wonderful job. Everybody, again, Kerry Russell, the black lady, and again, I'll stop saying the black lady when you have more than one black person in a movie.
That's right. Yes.
She has two moments, and one of them is so ridiculously ham-fisted because of the writing.
Right.
Her reaction in her second moment, her reaction to the telegram is so real. It's so real. It's perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Just perfect. I mean, it was one of those, like, here's your one scene, nail it. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, got it. Stick the landing.
Will do.
Okay,
Will do.
I will.
So, in fact, to the degree, anyways, she was just, this just everybody is in this.
Performances across the board were just real good. And you know, I mean, the last thing I'll say is something I've already said. I did not expect to like this movie. I remember when it came out, and I was like, nah, not seeing that. But I'm in no way sorry I saw it. I think you loved it more than I did, but I really liked it. You know, it is not Apocalypse Now. It's not The Deer Hunter,
No.
but it is not.
But if someone's going to say, tell me the name of a couple of good Vietnam War movies,
I might very well.
I'd be like, oh, you should check out We Were Soldiers.
Yes, agreed.
I just want to say, because it probably hasn't been said out loud on a podcast in a while, the actress's name we were just speaking of is Simbi Kali.
Okay.
And she, again, had 2 moments in this movie, and she nailed them, knocked it out of the park.
Nailed them both.
So
Even
I don't
the
know
one
what
that
she's up
wasn't
to
written
now.
well, she did well.
Yeah, she was
And
like,
the other
well,
one
this
was
is,
written
she's like, this
and-
is the garbage you gave me? All right, I'll take
All
care
right,
of that.
I'll make it work.
So I'd like to see Simbi Kali get some more work. She did a great job. Yeah, I love this movie. What's next on Project Melway, Andy Roth?
Next 3 weeks, Signs.
Okay.
Signs. Remember when M. Night Shyamalan made good movies?
No.
Signs. The Singing Detective.
Okay.
The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, wow.
Eh.
I have been dreading watching that movie with you for so long.
I've already stocked up on bottled water. I like it like I'm hunkering down for that stuff. You know what
I
mean?
hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I really do, actually.
So yeah, I look forward to discussing my fellow Jew's performance as Satan in that movie, and that is probably the last time I'll bring that up, because I don't actually think it's a deal. I just don't think it's a deal.
I differ with a lot of my colleagues on this film, but I could very well be in the wrong. So I guess
Okay.
I don't know. We may need to get a guest host for that, but probably not. All right, that's all we got for today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is a very special episode of Second Breakfast. Pay attention. And next week, Signs. How do you not want to hear about us talking about Mel Gibson as a priest
As an
who fights
Episcopal priest.
aliens?
Yes.
An Episcopal priest who fights aliens. How is this not my favorite movie of all
Right.
time?
Also known as the Phil Duvall story.
The Phil Duvall story. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to lie. I've killed a few aliens with water.
With water. With water that your daughter
Spoiler
has
alert.
left around.
Spoiler alert. Water.
Right. Swing away, Phil. See. Swing away. All right.
I can't wait to talk about this movie.
Me neither. I can't either. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll bring us to this the end of this installment of Project Melway, brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute. We are Second Breakfast, and I'm Andy Roth, and that's Phil Duvall. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.